Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Berman. Thanks so much for being the unsung cyber heroes who toil in anonymity to keep us safe at work and home at school. Welcome to the Cyber Hero Adventures Show. We're really excited to have you because today's episode focuses on the CMMC. And what's unbelievably interesting about this is that the supply chains have been, are now, and most likely will be under attack for the foreseeable future, which is why that we're so lucky to have real life heroes and experts such as Bob Dix on the phone. Hey, Bob, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Gary. Thank you so much for having me today.
What a privilege, to have you. You have a long career in public service and in all types of service to the country. We really appreciate that. And maybe for our audience, can you just kind of share a little bit about your, I'll use a comic expression, origin story?
So my own background, Gary, is both mixed, as you sort of alluded, in the public and the private sector. I began work in earnest on these topics that we're talking about today back during the time that I spent on the Hill working for the House Government Reform and Oversight Committee's subcommittee on technology, information policy, intergovernmental relations, and the census, the longest title of any subcommittee in the House of Representatives. But we had responsibility.
Wait, Bob, hold on just 1 second. You just earned a wow. And the reason is, let me do the humor and then you do the substance. That way we, kind of stay in our respective lanes. Is that okay?
I'll do that. Thank you very much. At any rate, we had responsibility for the implementation of a piece of legislation called the Federal Information Security Management Act, lovingly known across federal departments and agencies as FISMA. When we worked on a lot of those issues at that time. After I left the Hill, I spent almost 12 years working for a company called Juniper Networks, and I built and led their global government affairs and public policy team. And a lot of our focus was on cybersecurity, critical infrastructure protection, supply chain risk management, issues that are still top of mind today. So fast forward a bit, and I've had the privilege and honor of being involved with the CMMC Center of Excellence that was stood up about 7 or 8 months ago to help support the Department of Defense and its efforts around implementation of the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Standard. The idea is to try and improve cybersecurity protection and resilience and supply chain risk management. So we're very thrilled about the progress that we've made in a very short period of time and the opportunity to work with people like you.
Indeed. And we have some breaking news here. The CMMC Framework is built on 4 elements, it says: security domains, capabilities, controls, and processes. And when they are combined, there you have best practices. Well, that's quite a coincidence that we have you on the show right when we have that breaking news. Well, good luck.
It's such an important topic, and it's one that collaboration is so important. And in this particular case, what the CMMC COE represents is sort of the readiness and preparedness side of this equation to the topics that you just discussed. The government and the Department of Defense, its Program Management Office, are responsible for the assessment, audit, and certification process. As you know, there are somewhere around 300,000 to 400,000 contractors, subcontractors, suppliers, and vendors who are now subject to the requirements of CMMC at some level. And so many of them are small and medium-sized businesses. And within that, many do not really understand what these requirements are or what they need to do. So from a readiness and preparedness standpoint, the COE is here bringing together a number of providers and affiliates as partners to help those contractors navigate that process.
And so let's delve a little bit, further into that. Just for our audience who may be less familiar, what does the CMMC stand for? And here I put up a graphic representation of various levels. Maybe you can opine on that.
So the CMMC is the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. It is now a requirement. In the past, through a DFARS regulation, there was a self-attestation provision for those contractors doing business with the Department of Defense and eligible for dollars flowing through contracts or subcontracts. That now through the CMMC, that is a standard that is a requirement for those very same contractors. there are 5 levels of certification, from basic cyber hygiene up to handling sensitive data. And it just depends on what level of CUI, FCI, other types of data and information that may traverse your particular organization. Again, there's a flow down provision, so even prime contractors whose names you would recognize, while they're responsible, so are those that flow down in their supply chain, all the way down to the lowest level of their supply chain. So for some, the meeting that requirement is really pretty basic, while others it's much more sophisticated. And navigating that process can be challenging at times.
Indeed, and up until this process was implemented, was it accurate to say that compliance, if you will, was voluntary and not really requiring any type of accreditation?
The expectation was through the self-attestation program that those contractors would actually comply. But what was found was that wasn't quite as robust as what the Department of Defense had hoped, needed, or wanted in order to protect their data and their data streams. So this is driven off of the same set of controls and standards provided by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, through its 800-171 set of controls. Those are the same controls that were part of the DFARS regulation that were subject to the self-attestation. Yes, I did it. But now that is part of the requirements in the CMMC model itself.
Indeed, and one of the things that I'm incredibly proud to just kind of announce right now is we have a major sponsor, which is CREST, and they're a global organization dedicated to certification and training. And so, welcome aboard, CREST. Thank you.
They're an outstanding organization. If I might just comment and mention that they too are part of the Center of Excellence and helping us both here in the United States and in the UK.
Indeed. So tell us a little bit more, Bob, about the challenges associated with compliance.
Yes, thank you. So again, as I mentioned, many of those contractors that are subject to these requirements are small and medium-sized business. So through the Center of Excellence, what we have done is created 4 buckets of capabilities, and we are privileged now that we have a number of providers that can help navigate those sets of requirements. So the first bucket is around training, education, and awareness. Many organizations don't know what controlled unclassified information even is. They don't know what NIST or 800-171 or what those security controls are. And so helping them understand the basic fundamental requirements of CMMC, why it's important, how it's important, and what they need to do to meet those requirements is the first bucket. The second bucket is really around a gap assessment, a readiness assessment. Where are we now in our environment as opposed to where we need to be to meet the certification, whatever level that we are trying to accomplish. The third bucket then is around the remediation, the creation and implementation of a plan of action and milestones to address those gaps that were identified in that readiness assessment. And then the fourth bucket is what we call continuous improvement. And that is because once you meet the standard and achieve the standard and the certification, you're not done. There's an ongoing requirement for maintenance and monitoring and improvement to make sure you continue to meet that certification requirement, because you have to recertify again in a number of years. So it's a really interesting group of providers that we've put together that have capabilities to be able to help companies and organizations of all sizes be able to get through this process, get to the finish line, earn their certification, and therefore maintain their eligibility to do business with the Department of Defense.
And so I'm getting some feedback on your sound there for a moment, Bob. Basically, in order to acquire certification, what are the steps that an organization has to go through? Where do they start?
So there's a process through the CMMC accreditation body where you apply for the certification process, and there are steps that you have to go through. And again, the preparation is a big part of getting to that finish line and then submitting for the audit and the certification itself.
Indeed. And, so you mentioned earlier that it was, self-attestation, and now it's going to be, actual certification. How has this been received by the supplier ecosystem?
There's a lot of confusion because, again, a lot of folks don't really understand exactly what is expected of them, what the timelines are, what the ramifications are. So that there is a lot of confusion, and there are those like the Center of Excellence that are trying to help clear up some of that confusion, provide clarity around what those requirements are. We're also trying to be sensitive to the fact that there's an affordability issue because there's a cost. And so a number of the providers that we now have as participants in the Center of Excellence are also cognizant of that and have put packages together that are particularly targeted towards small, medium-sized businesses.
And are there any particular sectors of the economy that the CMMC is more relevant, towards versus others?
So as you know, the initial launch of this is related to the United States Department of Defense, so the defense sector. But we believe, and there is evidence to suggest, that the nature of this set of control requirements is likely to become a government-wide requirement, and therefore all critical infrastructure sectors and all of those across federal departments and agencies will be leveraging the CMMC in their procurement process going forward as a means of raising security, protection, and resilience across the board in the United States government. I think with permission, Gary, I might also mention that one of the other interesting parts about this is because many, even US-based companies are multinational. So they do business in other parts of the world, and their supply chains are located in other parts of the world. So the COE has already created an international footprint. We have locations in the EU, specifically in the UK right now. We have an affiliation in Italy. We have a location in the Asia Pacific region, with the location being in Australia, and we have representation now in India. And we're looking at other locations around the world in an effort to try and harmonize some of these various laws, regulations, and guidance requirements around data protection, privacy, data exchange, supply chain risk management, and so forth. So those that are subject to these are not paying for the same thing multiple times, that they can leverage that investment to achieve successful results around a number of these different requirements.
That sounds like a good idea. And so now with the recent attacks, SolarWinds and Anthem and others, across the federal government, is it safe to assume that CMMC is just really taking on a renewed or new sense of urgency? Is that valid?
I think the broader conversation of cybersecurity and supply chain protection and resilience is really where the focus is now more broadly. CMMC is a tool to that, but that's part of the good work that we are doing as well, is broadening the conversation to look more holistically at the supply chain risk management challenge, from origin to disposal and all the way through that. Know your supply chain. CMMC is an important tool in that entire approach, but as you know, it's a much bigger issue than just that.
Yeah, indeed. And so, an important part of this work is remediation. Is your organization set up to really help enterprises and SMBs be able to come back from attacks?
So our real focus is around preparation readiness. So the detection and prevention side, we're not as much involved in the remediation and recovery side, although our partner providers are. And so that's the connectivity there, is that many of our providers are in that space and have those capabilities. And I might include that recently we've added another partner who is a internationally recognized expert in industrial control systems and protection and resilience of industrial control systems, which sometimes gets left out of this conversation of basic cyber. And so again, to your point, SolarWinds and other of the recent current events that we have raised awareness across the board of this protection profile that's necessary, not just in the bits and bytes, but also in control systems and operational technology and other areas that aren't always part of the main discussion.
Indeed. And, pertaining to ICS, it's becoming increasingly important that the world understands the potential vulnerabilities within industrial control systems, to be sure. We saw, some of that caused by nature, in Texas. We had here in Florida an attack on a water system, water treatment system, excuse me. In Israel, there was an attack on their water, supply. I mean, and of course you have the electrical grid, which needs to be as resilient as possible. Here's a question that's impossible to answer, but I'll ask it anyways. Just say, using, let's say, a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not very good and 10 being, outstanding. How would you rate, America's stance pertaining to cybersecurity readiness?
Challenging.
That wasn't on the scale, Bob. I would. Although I'll accept it. That's
I'm somewhat
good answer.
reluctant to put a number on a 1 to 10, but
No, it's okay. Mission accomplished. Challenging. Fill us in on that a little bit.
So the interesting thing is that I think that part of the issue, Gary, is that a lot of people just don't know what to do. I mean, they've been victims of identity theft. They've had other issues that are in this space, but it's not clear to them what they need to do to be able to make themselves safer. And so we have some responsibility, I think, as government, as industry, as the academic community, as nonprofits, to help raise the bar of education and awareness. Even down in our K through 12 education systems, and helping people understand how to better protect themselves. It is still true today that a significant percentage, some would say 70 to 80% of the challenge we have and the vulnerability we have is a direct relation to basic cyber hygiene, password management, things of that nature that are not complicated and don't require technical degrees to be able to implement. So there are ways that we can improve upon just basic cyber hygiene and looking at some of the controls that are available to us today to make ourselves safer and more secure. It's a team effort. We have to all work together. Again, as I mentioned, government, industry, academia, nonprofits. We all have a stake in this, and that has been evidenced by some of the recent events, some of which you alluded to earlier, and the impact that has around the world.
Indeed. And let me just delve into a little bit further about, K through 12 education. That's something that we're involved with, the Cyber Hero Adventures comics, and in raising awareness. One of the interesting things that I've had the privilege of listening and learning from folks from the National Institute of Initiative on Cybersecurity Education under NIST is that there are actually well over 50 different roles that fall within the umbrella of cybersecurity that people can, funnel and develop great careers in. And what seems to happen around middle school, and let me just see if you think this is a valid premise, around middle school, if young kids maybe don't like math, let's say, or say I'm no good at computers or something like that, they just kind of shut that door. When really there are so many other ways to get involved in support of defending the digital universe. Is that a valid statement? And how do we make cybersecurity cool? Is I guess what I'm asking you.
So I think that's absolutely correct. And frankly, some of what you're doing is contributing in a positive way to helping it become more fun. Because some that don't understand it in the early phases, like you talked about, it could be just kind of something that they think in the abstract about. When in fact, these are career opportunities that are incredibly important, meaningful, and sustaining as this digital world that we live in today. And so I think people like you that are highlighting this in a way that resonates, especially with young people, is so incredibly valuable. And it's back to the point I made earlier, a national education and awareness campaign to raise awareness about not just how to protect ourselves, but what careers are available and why it is so important to our future that we have people that come into this profession. And there's so many opportunities for career growth and upward mobility. And I see it myself that more and more people are looking at that as a career path, but more has to be done to turn it into fun, as you talk about.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. I showed a moment, FUD to fun. Of course, everyone in our audience knows that FUD stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And there is plenty to be afraid of and to be uncertain about and to be doubtful of, but that doesn't mean you still can't have joy and passion and be mission driven while still helping to solve things. So that's kind of the secret sauce that we're all, you as well, are looking to create to kind of pivot this sort of I use an analogy in my head of a giant aircraft carrier, which is, let's say, the cybersecurity sort of a community, but then you have all these jets, everything going crazy all around. Is that a good metaphor or analogy?
Well, it is a wild, wild west even still today. But I would remind your audience that there are a lot of terrific people doing great things to try and address this challenge. It's not like we're standing there just completely vulnerable. There are a lot of people, and you mentioned NIST. There are some incredible people that work at NIST, patriots. There are people at DOD, at DHS, across the government, and frankly, a lot of brilliant people in industry and academia that are working on these issues and challenges every single day. So I want to make sure I don't leave any impression that we're not making progress, because we are, and a lot of people committed to that and dedicated to that. We still have things that we can do to raise the bar of protection, and we'll continue to be vigilant about that.
I'm so glad that you said that, because one of the things that I learned from my pivot from being a victim of cybercrime to becoming an advocate is there are hundreds of thousands and untold unsung heroes who do toil in anonymity, because the only time you hear about cybercrime is when the criminals win.
Yeah, it's true. And I salute people that are part of the ISAC community, the sector coordinating councils, the other groups and organizations, both here in the US and globally, because this really is a global issue. This is not confined to one country or another, that are out here in the trenches doing this work every day, as you mentioned. And we are making progress, and there's much more to do, and we'll stay at it. And frankly, thanks to people like you that are helping get this message out, then we'll continue to make progress.
Indeed. And so as we're kind of wrapping up here, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience to amplify your mission, or what do you need in terms of escalating and speeding up your great efforts?
Well, the Center of Excellence is based on trying to bring partner providers and partner affiliates together and to create a knowledge bank. That's one of the other pieces that we're building in there, to help share some of this information with folks as a place that they can come and learn more about these challenges, what they can learn from it, how they can get involved with it. So we're building this out. We're 6 months into this effort right now. I couldn't be more excited about the progress we've made. As you know, we had a global all-partner meeting a week ago. The energy and the enthusiasm and the synergy from some of the most intellectually capable people that I've ever had the chance to meet, that have innovative solutions and are inspired to create around solving this challenge, or at least contributing to greater protection and resilience, is really something very special. And we're going to keep at this. And I think by the next time you and I have a chance to get together, we'll even have more to report.
Indeed. And, because of the importance of your mission and the CMMC, I think, we can start planting the seeds to have an ongoing series. We'd love to have you and really some of your team members, the folks that I had the privilege to meet prior to this discussion are unbelievable. These are, very high level, busy people who have made the decision to support this, this worthwhile mission. So, we can, have them as guests on the show to talk about their particular perspectives and solutions. Does that sound like a good idea?
It sounds like a great idea, because there are some incredible men and women out here attacking this challenge every day with new ideas and creativity and innovation. So I think it's a great idea. And I think your audience would love hearing from some of these very special people.
You know, and speaking of hearing from very special people, you know, Bob, one of the things I'll do is we'll give you the embed code, you know, for this show and an RSS feed if you want to include our show on your website, or if there is anyone else in the audience who wants to contribute in this way by amplifying the show's mission, you know, just send an email to Gary at cyberheroescomics.com, and that would be great. So, Bob, how do people get in touch with you?
The website is cmmc-coe.org. My email address is bob.dix, D-I-X, at itac.org. And I would love to hear from folks. Visit the website. You can see a lot that's going on. And Gary, before we close, I just want to say thank you to you as well. What you are doing as an advocate is so incredibly valuable and important. You have such an enthusiasm around your advocacy work and raising this discussion and doing it in a way that is inviting and has people comfortable with having these discussions. So I want to shout out to you and say thank you for everything that you're doing. It's so incredibly important to this mission space to have people like you.
Well, you're very, very kind. I'm going to play this particular section for my better half, Valerie, because she sort of thinks I'm nuts. But you know, and why would she think that? I mean, what 63-year-old man goes to the dry cleaners and picks up a superhero costume? More on that some other time. Well, on behalf of a grateful nation, thanks, Bob, to you and your great team for defending the digital universe.
Thanks for having me.
Have a great day.